Good morning and welcome to the Monday Morning Megaphone. Logan Dixon here, and I've got with me my guest for the day, Clayton Homewood. Clayton is the pastor of Cherry Hill Baptist Church.
Cherry Valley.
Cherry Valley, I'm sorry. I don't know where I got Cherry Hill from. Cherry Valley Baptist Church, and where is that located?
Right outside of Jonesboro, so probably about 35, 40 minutes from Jonesboro.
Okay.
So we're pretty good, not too far away from a town, pretty good sized town from it.
Right. So I wanted to bring Clayton on. I've been wanting to bring him on the podcast for a while, just to kind of turn the mics on and see what happens. But I've actually got an express purpose today. We're going to be talking about the John Newton Pastors Conference that's coming up in May. Is that right?
Yeah, May 20th. 20th and 21st will be the conference dates, and both will be starting at 10 o'clock that morning. And yeah.
Yep. But before we get too deep into the topic of the conference, Clayton, tell me a little bit about your background. Tell me about how you got into ministry and how you got to where you are now. So that'll take us a little bit.
Yeah. Where's the time? Okay, so I was converted at 16. I grew up in church. I had made multiple professions of faith just as much as I had changed my socks. And none of those were authentic. There was really nothing going on mentally or in my heart spiritually, any concern for Jesus, the things of God, or anything like that. It was just really something that I hope this works, and maybe that will trigger that and kind of thing. And I did that at 7 and at 12. I was baptized both of those times. And then at 16, I finally felt the call of God on my life to come to Him and to rest. And so from then on, I was converted and was baptized shortly after. And then a year later, I actually surrendered to ministry at a church that was going through quite a bit already, and was going through some turmoil, some inner conflict stuff, but for the most part was still pretty good for me to be able to express that interest. Hey, I think I'm being called into ministry. And then switched churches with a pastor who really we could not agree on anything, but he really took the time to help train me and disciple me and made sure I had context to be able to practice my craft of preaching and learn how to get in the swing of things of studying and doing like that, and just being a church member at the same time. And so I did that for a couple of years and filling the pulpit from 18 on until 21. And then in 21, a church in my town where I was living, Forest City, I had filled in for there quite a few times, actually. And they had a pastor there at the time. And I'll get into that, what his actual title was here in a minute, but he was the pastor, he's the fill-in guy, and he asked me to come up and say, hey, the church really likes you, they really like your family, why don't you come and view of a call for our youth minister? And they said you would be doing majority of the work because we have no youth. And I was thinking, okay. But at this point I was kind of ready to serve in that kind of context and be willing to do anything I can, hit the ground running kind of thing. And so I came and I preached that morning. I was supposed to preach both services. And the pastor there at the time, come to find out, he wasn't officially the pastor. He was more the supply pastor who they just wound up licensing. And so one of the things here about some of the free churches that we deal with, and I'm not sure if it's the same thing for you in Cumberland, but they separate licensing and ordination. So ordination you could have without actually being licensed. And so that was kind of something weird, and I never knew that. But anyway, come to find out, he was not actually the pastor. He was just kind of the licensee, they licensed him, and he was full in the pulpit for about a year and a half. And we got to talking a little bit, got to talking about how, what we expect from ministry, what he expects, and things like that. And come to find out, he was divorced. And I said, well, brother, I'm sorry, but I cannot sign up for this. For one, you don't really have the authority to do so, to have me on and me submit to you when you're really not really part of the staff. And so we had a long talk, and I could tell also that he was kind of heartbroken, and he was kind of mentally and emotionally exhausted. So I think there was some other underlying things going on. So that was a Sunday. The following Sunday, I was actually supposed to go with a family member's kind of mini reunion on my dad's side of the family, and wasn't really even going to go to church that day either. But one of the men of the church had called me up like around 7 o'clock in the morning and had asked, would you be willing to come in and preach for us? Well, I said, well, I'm not going to really be in town today. And so, but, I mean, don't you guys have a pastor? What's going on? I said, well, he kind of just grabbed all the stuff and left and told us to mail him his last check. And I'm thinking, what in the world's going on here? And come to find out, he had dealt with some severe manic depression and bipolar disorders, and it was affecting him too much being in full-time ministry or any kind of ministry for that matter. And so he kind of just grabbed all the stuff from the church, didn't really tell anybody. He texted one guy of the church, and just that was it. And we never heard from him again. So I go up that following Monday. We had a 4-hour conversation about where I am theologically, what my hopes would be for any kind of church, not just theirs. And so what they wanted me to do was come on as a supply pastor, somebody they would have to fill in the pulpit while they have time to get up a search committee, go through all that jazz. And I was doing that for 6 months. And in that time, they decided they wanted to ordain me and officially called me as their pastor. And so I was there for almost 3 years and 8 months. That's how long I was there. So I've been in that, and then I went to Morrow Baptist. Of course, you know that. He preached at the last conference there, a little town of nowhere. And then I was there for 4 years, a little over 4 years and maybe like a month or two. And from there, I received the call to go to Cherry Valley, and that's about it.
Well, I mean, that's quite the journey.
Yeah.
Where was that first church you said that you pastored?
It was at Forest City Baptist Church.
City Baptist Church.
It was, people always said it was behind the courthouse, but technically I'm talking about Main Street, and it was always in front of the courthouse. And so you have the little church. It used to be a First Christian church, and then they closed down in 2000. Well, in 2006, another pastor got it and spruced it up a little bit, fixed up some things, and replanted it as Forest City Baptist. And he was there. I'm not sure how long he was there, but he was there for quite a bit, and the church was actually really growing. But unfortunately, was involved in a church split shortly after, and the church just never really recovered since then. And so, Forest City Baptist, right on South Main. Yeah,
I remember whenever I preached at your church for the pastors' conference last year.
Yeah,
you took me on a little tour of Morrow and Forest City, and you drove me by that church.
Yeah,
and so it's interesting to see where God's taken you, from Forest City to Morrow to Cherry Valley.
Yeah, he takes me from like a town of 14,000 to 140. And then again to a town of like 640 something. So it's like, I think I'm kind of getting up there, back up to the 14,000 mark, but I'm not sure yet. He might put me down at a 50 town people. You just never know.
Right.
But yeah, I was there for 3 years, over 3 years, and then 4 years for Morrow. And in Forest City, I was incredibly bivocational. What I mean by that is I had to work 50 plus hours plus pastor and also cultivate relationship with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. And so I was busy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that'll make you busy, man. I don't know how you did it because I'm full time, and sometimes I don't feel like I have enough time. So,
No, and then now, for me here at Cherry Valley, I started seminary a little bit before I left Morrow, about a year or so beforehand. And so I was bivocational then. So I was working at a funeral home. Then I was pursuing my license there. So I was studying everything for that, doing school as best as I can and not try to be a flunky. And then also pastor this church who expects me to pastor on a full-time but a part-time salary.
right,
And so, yeah. And then now my life has gotten even crazier because I'm starting school in January back, and now I've got twins.
right.
So,
I was about to
just,
say now you've got twins, so
yeah, I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment when it comes to busyness.
right. Well, Clayton, it's good to have you on the podcast. So tell me about the pastors conference.
Okay. Quit that
Tell me
smoking.
about the pastors conference. Tell me about why does John Newton need a pastors conference? He's dead. Doesn't he have everything he already needs now?
Yeah, well, he's got way more than he needs right now. Not dealing with William Cowper all the time, that's for sure. That's really bad. But anyway, sorry, my apologies. No, so we did a conference my first year. After my first year at Morrow, I wanted to start doing pastors conferences, and the church allowed me to do it. And they said, at first, they said, we're not too sure if we want to pay everybody to come, pay for their gas and all that, but we'll provide food. And I said, okay, I can work with that. So how many people can I talk to who would be willing to travel to little town of nowhere for free and expect nothing in return except good fellowship, maybe some food, and maybe a free book? And who can I talk to? It's like, well, I've actually got quite a bit of contacts of people who I can strong arm and do that. So our first conference was Enjoying God. And I was really pushing this idea of kind of religious affections and the Edwardian, Piperian, kind of sense, really in that ministry. And I was really wanting to bring that to the Delta, more so than I thought anybody else have done before. And so how do I take this huge idea and bring it to this place? And so that was the first year of the conference. There was nobody except us, me, and the speakers. So, but we had a good fellowship time. I had pastors who were really in the several hundreds or hundreds, a couple hundred so people in their churches, bigwigs, according to us, people that we'd serve, who really showed true humility and really showed the eagerness to want to serve other pastors and be loving to them and to help them and preach to them. And that is something that I found was awesome. So the first year we did that, we did on Enjoying God, and we had a bunch of different stuff, kind of tagged up. And the second year we did Jonathan Edwards and the Religious Affections. That turned out great. We had probably about as much as what we had last year. Actually, last year was probably the most we've ever had, which was close to 20. So we had a little over 12 to 13 people. So like compared to last year, which was just me and the speakers, versus the second year Religious Affections Conference, I'm thinking I've made it. Yep, I'm going to host Desiring God right here. And that turned out great because not only was the messages and the theological substance so rich, but the fellowship was just as rich. And the materials that was given out as kind of a tie-in to these things was also really great. I mean, I had Ligonier was willing to give me multiple issues of their table talk. Desiring God had sent out several books that were just for free. They didn't expect anything in return. I think I was even able to get Trinitarian Bible Society to send us free calendars. And so I was like, how am I doing this? And and so that was really great. And then the third year, of course, Gospel Sufficiency Conference, where you preached at. And it was just as good. I mean, the fellowship was great. We had people who differed on ecclesiology and soteriology. And we had one person who was wrong on baptism, you.
Right.
I've got to do a pot shot.
I've got you on my podcast, man.
Yeah, I know. And so so I wanted to really take a venture out and say, can we truly say, yes, these people are brothers and they're sisters in Christ, but can we fellowship with them in this kind of manner and actually hold a somewhat impromptu church service with an actual formal liturgy or order of service? How does that work? What does this chaos look like? And sure enough, of course, the theology was rich. The fellowship was richer. And I think the pastors and the other saints in the pew came back refreshed and felt, yeah, this is great. This is nothing compared to like T4G or anything like that, where you go and the theology is rich, but you don't know people from Adam over there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the case for me when I went in 18, which was their last one before, COVID hit. And it was great. I enjoyed it, but I didn't know anybody there. I knew the guy who went with me, who drove with me, but that was it because he was a pastor in a town up the road from me. And so that was kind of something that I wanted to do. And then as I was kind of getting ready to kind of, maybe I'm going to do another conference, maybe I'm going to do it on Spurgeon or something else. And I had you on for that one too, but that one kind of fell through. And so I had to regroup and retry everything because at this moment I was switching churches.
Right.
I was like, this is not going to work. And kids were coming around the same date as the conference. And so it was like, I just have to push it up, just like give me like 6 more months. And it's one of the things that I was starting to realize is that some people have what is called the Benjamin Keach Conference. The Reformed Baptists have that, and over in California, and that does really well for them. The New Covenant guys, they have a John Bunyan Conference, and that does really well for them. But what about people who really are just normal? I mean, who want rich theology and knows that rich theology is the thing that causes us to walk more closely with Christ, pastor our people better, and love our families more because of it, more Christ-like. Who's the guy that really emulates that despite his faults? And they are strenuous. And no one really popped out to mind to me other than John Newton. One is because John Newton was involved in the slave trade. And one of the things that helped expel slavery from England was him being brutally honest about some of the things he had to deal with on sailing back and forth between Africa and England, of the brutality and the horrendous things that he had to partake in. And I think he wrote in one of his letters that he would tend to his devotions in the morning and then throw dead slaves overboard an hour afterwards. And so just this completely different thing that people would deal with. And you would think, well, how in the world does people deal with this? How this guy doesn't seem like a very good Christian to me. He seems like a very hypocritical pastor. But the thing is, that's what all Christians are. We are so complicated and so hypocritical at times that we really don't know what our hands are doing at the time. But in his letters to his congregation and to other people like William Wilberforce, William Cowper, all these people, you see his true self, because he was not a very good preacher. He tried to emulate so many different people, and it just didn't work out well, and it just never ended well as far as preaching goes. But in his letters and his own pastoral visitations, that's where his true theology showed up, and that's where his true pastoral and practical theology showed up, is in him writing letters to William Cowper, being with him even after William Cowper tried to commit suicide. That is what I wanted us to kind of have the banner over and said, yes, we're incredibly messed up. Yes, we have problems. Our family lives are sometimes not the greatest because sometimes the church gets in the way, or our own pride and selfishness and even shame will get in the way. But in the midst of all of that, God has still called us, and he's still equipping us to do the task that is at hand. And so I thought John Newton is the guy. And so that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted people who differ on soteriology, ecclesiology, doctrine of God, divine simplicity versus no on natural theology or anything like that. I wanted to say, let's just put all those things aside and let's focus on the text. Let's focus on our God, who we can put those things aside and truly fellowship and love on each other and love Christ. Because if we were to, John Mark Hicks said this, said if when we come to love on God, God comes also to love on us. And I wanted a conference to kind of really reflect that in the midst of this crazy time politically, and COVID still kind of rearing its ugly head every so often, and all of that. And I wanted us to be able to come together, love on each other, despite differences, despite problems that we may have with one another. I wanted to say, let's love, let's fellowship, and let's worship Christ. Let's be renewed by him. Let's be revived by him. And let's also be forgiven by him as well.
Absolutely. I love the idea. I love the concept of that. And it makes me want to have some kind of pastor's conference or Bible conference at my church.
Yeah.
I want to be a Clayton Homewood when I grow up. So
All right.
I guess I'll have to change my view on baptism first.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. You're gonna have to get right first.
So tell us about the speakers.
Okay. So let me pull that up, because if you don't know me, I have terrible memory of who goes first each day and all that. So, okay. So, for day one, the entire conference is based on Ephesians 2. So within 2 days, we're going to walk through exegetically Ephesians 2, verse, all the way to verse 28 or whatever. I can't remember what verse it ends, but we're going to walk through that entire chapter and break that down and apply it, essentially, the gospel in it, to our daily Christian lives and also our lives as we are pastors. And so one of the guys that I've always wanted to have, because I really like his mind, and we think a lot on similar things like Baptist ecclesiology and also historical Baptist theology, like Baptist Catholicity, is Philip Powers. Philip Powers is actually, it was funny because his family, his uncle, I think, used to actually pastor at Moro Baptist. And so the Powers and me kind of have some kind of relationship, and also his other uncle, Chris Powers, also pastors at the same church where I grew up. And so I have some kind of connection with the Powers in that way. But Philip Powers, we think alike in it. And I wanted him to come in, not only just to, hey, I want to fellowship with you. I want you to fellowship with other these guys as well. But also I want you to come in and bring us up to speed what's been going on. Why is Paul writing this letter? What are some of the things that he's written in chapter 1? What's so special about chapter 2? Bring us up to speed to chapter 2, basically. So I wanted us to bring up a book introduction of how we are going to walk through chapter 2. Okay, so that's the first speaker. The second speaker is David Young. He's covering verses 1 through 3. And essentially he's covering the problem of man. What is man's problem? Is he kind of okay? Is he, pretty well doing okay? He just needs some Jesus on the side to really get him through? Or is there a much more dire problem? And I think that's what the Brother David is bringing up. He's,
it's worse than that. He's dead, Jim.
Yeah, he's a whole lot more dead. I mean, he's about as deader than a guy that you found 4 days in and you had to carry to the funeral home. So it's that dead. And then next up is Alan Nelson. Now, Alan Nelson, this is actually his third year coming to these conferences. He has been very gracious to me and being willing to do this. I've always allowed him also to, hey, sell your books if you want to sell them. If you want to give them away, that's up to you. That's your business. But we'll come money in hand because if you have not read his 2 books, they're really, really great and they're very rich. Death to Life, I took my Moral Baptist through, and they really, really enjoyed it. We understood salvation better. Probably going to be doing it here soon in Cherry Valley. And so he's covering verses 4 and 5. And so Alan Nelson, let me back up a little bit. David Young, actually, that's his church is where we're going to be having the conference at. And so because I'm so new at Cherry Valley and I didn't want to spring something like this on him right off the bat, and also I have left Moral Baptist, David Young has always said, if you're not at Moral Baptist, bring it over here. And so I took him up on that, and sure enough, he agreed. And so funny thing about West Memphis is there's also a ministerial alliance over there that has been in the works for well over 70 some odd years, where different churches, the Anglican churches have come together, some of the Church of Christ folks have come together, the Baptists, the Methodists, had a Catholic church, had the Roman Catholics show up one time. That didn't work out too well. Wonder why. And so I'm really hoping.
Always ruin everything.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, they don't know where the authority comes from except from Pope so-and-so. Oh, well, but that Pope but the next Pope after him just got rid of everything the previous Pope said. So you don't really know where authority comes from or where actual tradition comes from. But anyway, that's a side note. So they have a ministerial alliance there. And so he has already even shared that to their Facebook page. And so I'm really hoping some of those guys will come out and kind of even enrich this even more. And then Alan Nelson is at Second Baptist Perryville. And then day 2 is we're going to be focusing on 6 through 22, and it's John McCallum. This will be his second year coming in, and I really appreciate the pastoral understanding that John McCallum has. I really do appreciate it. He's written a book, so he's kind of up there, as far as smart people goes.
He's written 3 books.
Yes, he has written 3 books. He's written on 23rd Pastor and Preacher and a children's book. He even gave me and Jared Schindler, my brother-in-law, a free children's book. So it's actually Christmas time, and so I want to where's it at now?
I didn't know about the children's book, so I guess he's written 4 books because he also wrote on Revelation.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. I forgot about the Revelation one. And so he's written those books. And John McCallum comes from, I think, First Baptist Hot Springs. I think it's the title. And he's coming, and he really shows the nature of a pastor. And he is willing to come out to the Delta and preach to a bunch of guys who pastor in the Delta. And so I think that's really commendable. And then we have you. Focusing on 11 through 18, and I'm going to put your mic is going to be cut off at any moment next time when I hear the word baptism or church polity or anything like that, and so I'll just cut that off automatically. It's like nope. And so
I promise I'm not going to drown you all.
Okay, us Baptists. I told this joke to the other persons the other day to my church. I have a retired pastor actually in my church, and his brother-in-law is one of the deacons there as well. But anyway, it says, we Baptists, we're not afraid of water because we're willing to be submerged in water. But when it comes to rain, we get so scared of it. And so you have 11 through 18, and I was really encouraged by your last year's message of focusing on that and the God called, Christ sustained. I remember that title. I still have your notes, by the way, if you ever want those. I don't know why I wound up with your actual outline or not, but anyway.
Oh, no, I've got it saved on Google Drive.
Okay. And so we are doing that. And then to kind of close us out is Danny Thursby. Danny Thursby actually works at Grace Theological Seminary. And he is also an elder at Grace Bible Church there in Conway as well. And so this will be his second year also to come, and he's going to finish out the chapter with us as well. And I know Danny Thursby fairly well. We've had pretty good discussions. So, and I really enjoy his preaching and his willingness also to come and help shepherd us for an hour or so. And so, yeah.
Well, man, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And if you're a pastor and you're listening to this, I want to invite you to come out for a couple of days and join us for this time of fellowship and worship. I really enjoyed the last conference we had. It was incredible. I made all kinds of connections. I'm so glad I got to meet John McCallum and David Young. David was a blast, man.
Yeah. Yes, he is. Yeah.
I think at the panel discussion, when we were about to wrap up the panel discussion on the day that I participated in it, he said, "I think there's one question that we're failing to ask." And he looked at me and he says, "Why aren't you a Baptist?"
Because you preach like one.
And I know I heard that a lot that day. And I said, well, it's because, we, as a Presbyterian, we love our infants.
Oh, okay. Got to go that low. Huh?
And then I asked David later, I said, well, why aren't you a Presbyterian? And he said, well, we hate our infants. And I said, well, that's the answer I was looking for.
That sounds like David. And me and David Young go way back, actually, because he really helped shape me and helped really even give me an outlet to some of the theological things I was pursuing and understanding and all that. He really just was a guy who I could just sit and talk to and rant even to. But he was the kind of guy who would listen, who would help point me in the right direction and just kind of let me go from there. And so I remember him.
How did you meet him?
How I officially met him was actually church camp. So in Wynn, there is our association, Tri-County Baptist Association, used to have, we're in the process of selling it now, but we have a church camp, Tri-County Baptist Camp. And he would help serve there because he would help teach some of the lessons throughout the day. And we met him, me and a previous friend met him, and he was just a guy who to me acted like John Calvin. He had a rich theological mind, was awesome to hang out with, and he was kind of a dork. And so I was like, well, that matches with my personality. So that's what we did. And so sure enough, kept in contact with him. He served on church camp a couple years, quit shortly after I did, I think before actually. And loved it always. Every time we, had a associational meeting or anything like that, he was the first guy I looked for. And then the conferences really helped spruce that relationship up. And in fact, actually during camps, he would be the person who we would look to for free books because he always had so many books left over in his library that he wasn't going to read or go through. So he would take like a big, huge tote of them and just lay them out on the table, and it says was open to the youth. And so I was introduced to a lot of theological topics that I had no idea about or what to even think about, even in the process of him giving free books. So, and he's also providing free books of Gentle and Lowly, Dane Ortland's book. He's given copies of that, and I've been able to get a hold of copies of Why Church is Essential through, I think Jonathan Lehman was one of the authors of that. So those are going to be the free books.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any other freebies besides those that you know of?
No, I have not been able to get a hold of anything. Trinitarian Bible Society will not return my call because I guess they want money and I'm not giving them money. So, and I think I've exhausted all the other outlets that I've tried because I've tried Crossway wants money. Grace to You also wants money. Desiring God kind of wants money, but they'll give it to you anyway. But they'll, it's like, okay, I'm just going to give it to you and hope for the best, that kind of thing. So as long as this conference is free, I want the materials to be free as well.
Sure.
One of the things that prevents um, people going to these kind of conferences is price.
Yeah.
Mainly because of location, they can't afford to get out there for drive, flight, whatever it may be, or it's because they are charging an arm and a leg just to go. I've seen conferences charge up to $300 to even $600 before, and you should not be putting that kind of price tag on enriching or causing fellowship with other pastors. One of the things that really turned me off about for Together for the Gospel, even the first year that I went, as much as I love and respect, well, some of them I respect, others I think they're losing their ever loving Christian minds. But much as I love and respect some of them most of the time, one of the things that they don't advertise in T4G was that you have the actual audience, and then you have a red tape kind of area to where the speakers and all their invited people are, and you are not allowed. The audience are not allowed to fellowship with people like Ling and Duncan or Piper or anything else for that matter. So if you were to go to those places, they have legitimately security guards there to block you. So I remember one year I was trying to go and talk with Ling and Duncan. I appreciated Ling and Duncan. He really helped me out in a lot of areas spiritually. I wanted to say, I thank you for your ministry. I thank you for your ministry at RTS especially, and all those things. And I was stopped way before I could even get to him. And things like that I don't want. I don't want celebrity pastors. Celebrity pastors only do horrible things to the Church of God in the long run. As much as they put out wonderful things, and it's the way of the game now, I don't think they're going to truly enrich the small town people
Right.
and shepherds trying to shepherd small town folks as well. And so that's what I want. I want a conference where none of that crap is going to happen, and we can talk to each other and be truthful with each other in all kinds of ways.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that, and I certainly didn't know that about T4G.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you heard or not, but this year was actually the last year they did the T4G conference.
Yeah, it's in April. It's like the day after my birthday. It was like the 15th or something like that.
Mhm.
And I had even talked to my church about going, but that moment alone in 18 when I had to deal with it, it's like, it's just going to be another thing. The only thing I would really do up there is maybe just hang out and go grab books and maybe stick around for a message or two. I would stick around for like Sinclair Ferguson and Alistair Begg, who are going to be there for the first time, and Piper, of course. But those are people who really I don't really have to go and see firsthand.
Right.
I mean, if you were to go for T4G, there's only one thing that I would say to go for: the book sales. The book sales alone are worth it. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. Like you said, you can easily watch those guys at home, and especially if you're going to pay all that money and not get to fellowship with them,
Yeah,
that's insane to me. And I get it. They can't talk to everybody, but the fact that they've got a taped off area with security guards, that's nuts.
yeah.
At least with us, a small town over in West Memphis.
Yeah,
Nobody will fellowship with you. We'll even sign your Bibles if that's what you're into.
yeah, and that's what my wife did, because she grew up in the Independent Baptist realm, and during camp meetings, her Bible would actually be signed by all the preachers during that time, and that's special to her, and so stuff like that is kind of special to me. People who I look up to and respect. I want to be able to say, hey, I had so and so sign this because it matters to me. But one thing I started to notice, actually, with pastors like this, and I learned this the hard way with people like C.J. Mahaney, Tullian Tavigin, and others, and even Joshua Harris now, who is probably the most recent case for this. God will literally topple those people to the ground, and so that you quit looking up to them the way that we do.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He did the same thing with C.J. Mahaney because it was proven that he covered up some heinous crimes. Tully Division just became a dog. And then Joshua Harris apostatized. And all these things, God is kind of showing the people of God and saying, you're going to quit looking to them. Yes, I've used them for these things. I've used them for the cross-centered life, and I've used them for Jesus plus nothing was everything, and I've used them for, Joshua Harris was, I bought into the I kiss dating goodbye, but when you actually start dating, you realize how impractical and unhelpful it is.
Yeah, I mean, he was literally 21 years old when he wrote that book.
I don't trust a 21-year-old
No.
about dating. No, I mean, unless you're writing the Institutes at 22, I'm not going to pay much attention to you. And
I know. And Spurgeon pastored his first church when he was 17. So
yeah, I mean, so anyway, so I bought into that whole thing, but his other books were great. Like Dug Down Deep, I really enjoyed because that was my first official walkthrough of Christian doctrines and the Christian faith, and even people like Mark Driscoll. My first official theological book was by him. It was Death by Love. And it really just brought all these things about what Christ has done on the cross for us. He is our atonement. He is our Christus Victor. He's our propitiation atonement and all these things. And he brought it down to a pastoral level. So it was almost like him pastoring you throughout these letters. And so all these things that God has done to topple these people to the ground, to even tarnish their reputations even because of sinfulness and pride, God is saying, you're going to quit looking to them. You're going to look to me. Because if you keep looking to them, I'm going to keep toppling people down. I'm going to keep toppling nations down. I'm going to keep toppling political parties down and all these things. I'm going to keep knocking them down and destroying them on a level of Sodom and Gomorrah until you look to me and find your actual victor, which is Christ, and find your actual rest and peace and joy and happiness in the Lord Jesus Christ. So that is something that I want a conference that helps us with that, to get rid of all the celebrity pastors and all this jazz, and to just be pastors, be normal people, truly sinful pastors. That's what I want. And
that's good.
I've looked up order services, liturgies as well, and that was something new for me to help, kind of rein in, kind of give us an official, formal service. To cast our minds off of, this simple thing, but to really cast our mind to our God is transcendent. Our God is in the heavens, but he also he is not so high and mighty where we have to try so hard to get to him and strain and cry and do all these things to get to him. No, he comes to us. And I wanted an order of service that reflected that as well.
Right. Well, man, it's good. I'm going to be looking forward to it. And again, I hope you'll join us if you're a pastor watching this or listening to it. This is going to be a good time of worship and fellowship. And we're going through Ephesians 2, so we're going to hear the gospel. You can't go wrong going through Ephesians 2.
No, you really cannot.
Now, I don't expect it to be like this at all, but I'll tell you one time where I did see a situation where I saw a passage of scripture in the bulletin that was going to be preached. And, I expected more than what it was. I used to work overnights at a gas station. Or no, it was at a hotel when this happened. I used to work overnights at a hotel. And so I would usually work Saturday overnights, get up early Sunday and get off work early Sunday morning. And I couldn't go to bed because if I went to bed, I would just sleep the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would go to the early 8:30 a.m. service at First United Methodist Church where I live, and then at 11 I would go to my church since I was still awake. Mm-hmm. So it was Easter. It happened to be Easter Sunday morning, and I went to the First United Methodist Church. And I looked over the liturgy in the pamphlet and saw that the text was John 20, the resurrection. It's Easter Sunday, and they're doing breakfast they're doing free breakfast afterward. So I'm like, okay, you got to, and there's a lot of people coming in for the 8:30 service too. So I'm thinking, all right, you've got a packed church, you've got food in the back, you've got the sermon text is John 20. You cannot mess this up. Like you can't.
But you're at a Methodist church though.
Right. I failed. I failed to take into account the capacity for how much Methodists can mess up theology. So the pastor gets up there and she reads the text, and of course you're going to say that that's where they went wrong too, because they had one pastor, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I called it. But she gets up there and reads the passage, and she goes into her sermon, and she starts talking about how the Ministerial Alliance in our town has done so much to, give free lunches out to kids and pack backpacks for the schools and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, so this is an introduction. She'll get to the text in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes go by. 15 minutes go by.
Oh gosh.
And then at about the 16 or 17 minute mark, she's still talking about this, and she brings it back around to John 20, and she goes, to see the resurrection of Christ now, you have to see it in the smiling faces of these children when they receive their lunch, and she brings it around to social justice and works in the community.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Then she ends it. And I look around, and everyone is just, half of them are asleep and the other half are just inoculated, I guess.
Well, they're probably so used to it now.
Probably. I mean, they sung the last hymn, and we closed, and I went back and got free food. I mean, I had to sit through that. I might as well get some food for it. But I was just done.
Yeah.
So that is the exact opposite of what I expect whenever I see Ephesians 2 on the docket for this conference. I fully expect to hear a solid gospel exposition, and I know we'll have that with the speaker lineup that we have.
Yeah, we will. And yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to say about your ministry or the conference?
No. Just anybody who's out and about on the 21st of May, please come check us out. It starts at 10 o'clock for both days, and there's a free lunch as well. David Young's church has graciously agreed to feed us for those 2 days, and so that's already taken care of. And there's also plenty of restaurants around in there, and so Marion is just right up the street, and there's a Colton's there as well. And so anybody who doesn't want free food, you can go pay for something. And then if you're going
to snub the potluck at a Baptist church.
Yeah, I mean, come on. This is it. This is our time to shine right here. No other denomination does this as best as we do. And so, and then also, if you're out and about on a Sunday morning for Cherry Valley, around in that area, Wynn area, Jonesboro area, come and see us. Services at 10:30 that day. And so that's something I've had a joy of being able to church there so far, and I've enjoyed it because they've really taken a liking to my family. I think it's really only because of the kids. They're cute and everything. They really care about us, but no, I'm kidding. But no, they really have shown an interest and love towards us as their pastor and my wife, and so I couldn't ask for anything better.
Good. We're glad to hear that.
Yep.
Well, Clayton, thank you for being on the podcast. This has been a phenomenal time together, and I look forward to having you back on the podcast sometime. I look forward to the conference. So,
thank you.
All right, well, guys, thank you for joining us, and we will see you again on the Monday Morning Megaphone. If you're following the live stream, you'll see me again later today. I'll be talking about why Calvinism is not fatalism. That'll be around 1 o'clock. And then if you're listening to this on the podcast, you'll actually hear that next week. And then we've got on the 23rd of this month, we've got Josh Summer coming on. And we will be talking about natural theology, Trinity, and why all of this matters to church folks in the pews. So again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us again. Catch you later.